We all make promises every single day. But what's that invisible line we cross that turns a simple promise into a deal that the law will actually enforce? Well, today, we're going to map out the entire journey of a contract, from just an idea to a handshake, all the way to the finish line. Let's dive in. This is really the big question, isn't it? It's the difference between a casual, "I'll help you move next weekend," and the ironclad framework that lets you buy a house or start a business. So what are the secret ingredients to that legal magic? Let's break it all down. So before we can even talk about the life cycle, we have to understand the creature itself, right? What is the fundamental DNA of a contract? What makes it tick?
At its core, when you boil it all down, a contract is just an enforceable promise. But don't let that simplicity fool you, because it is incredibly powerful. Every single time you buy a coffee, sign a lease, click I agree online, you're relying on this idea. It's literally the invisible engine that makes our entire economy run.
All right, so think of it like a recipe. To bake a legally binding contract, you need these 4 essential ingredients. Let's say I offer to sell you my bike for $100. We both agree on that? Boom, that's mutual agreement. The bike and the $100, that's the consideration. It's the something of value we're each giving up. If we're both adults and know what we're doing, we're competent parties. And, well, selling a bike is perfectly legal, so we've got a lawful purpose. If you miss even one of these, poof, you don't have a contract.
So once we've got our foundational elements in place, we get to the really exciting part, the spark of creation itself, the deal. This is the moment a contract is actually born, and it all comes down to 2 simple, powerful actions, a clear offer and an just as clear acceptance.
Now, you'd think this would be pretty straightforward, but this is exactly where things can get a little murky. See, a real offer has to be a definite, solid promise. But sometimes what looks like an offer isn't one at all. Let's look at a real-world case to see what I mean.
So get this. It's a classic example. A guy named Gerald Bean sees an ad for a boat race. The grand prize is a boat, a trailer, and a 20-horsepower motor. Sounds great. So he enters, and he actually wins. But then, the sponsor comes to him and only offers a tiny 6-horsepower motor. Bean thought that by winning the race, he was accepting their specific offer. But was he?
And that right there is the million-dollar legal question. Was that ad a binding promise from the company, a real offer? Or was it just an invitation for people like Mr. Bean to come and make an offer to them by entering the race? That little distinction changes absolutely everything. So here's the key difference. A real offer says, I promise to do this if you promise to do that. Take it or leave it. An invitation to offer, like a price tag on a sweater in a store, is more like saying, hey, I'm open for business and I'm willing to consider offers around this price. When you take that sweater to the counter, you're the one making the offer to buy. The store is the one who accepts it. Okay, so let's say we have a valid offer on the table. The next step, naturally, is acceptance. But timing is everything here. Does the deal lock in when you think about accepting, when you pick up the phone to call, or when you actually send the message? Well, contract law has a very specific and honestly kind of surprising answer. It's called the mailbox rule, and it's a classic. And get this, the moment you drop that acceptance in the mail, or these days, the second you hit send on that email, bam, the contract is formed. It is a done deal. It doesn't matter if the other person doesn't read it for days. It doesn't even matter if you immediately regret it. The deal is legally locked in the second it's sent. Now, a contract usually starts as a 2-person story, but sometimes the plot thickens. New characters can get brought in who can either gain rights or take on some of the duties from the original dealmakers.
And there are 2 main ways this happens. You can assign your rights, like, say, your right to get paid to someone else, maybe a bank. Or you can delegate your duties, so a general contractor might delegate the painting job to a painting subcontractor. But here's the catch. You can't delegate a duty that needs your unique personal skill. If I hire you to paint my portrait because I love your art style, you can't just send your cousin to do it instead. That's a no-go.
And sometimes you've got a whole crew in on the deal from the very beginning. The perfect example is 3 roommates all signing one lease. In that kind of joint contract, the landlord can hold each one of them responsible for the entire rent, not just their 1/3 share. You're all in it together for the whole shebang. Every story has an ending, and contracts are no different. They don't just last forever. So now let's look at the final chapter in a contract's life, how it gets terminated. So how does the story end? Well, ideally, it ends with performance. Everyone does what they promised. Happy ending, credits roll.
Sometimes the parties just shake hands and mutually agree to walk away. Or, life happens. Something unforeseen makes the deal totally impossible. And then there's the most dramatic ending, breach. That's when one party just fails to hold up their end of the bargain, which of course leads to some serious legal consequences.
And there you have it, the full journey. We've seen how a contract is born from those 4 key ingredients, how it comes to life through a clear deal, how it can evolve and bring in new people, and all the different ways its story can finally end. It's so much more than just a document, isn't it? It's a dynamic, living process.
Which leaves us with one final and I think really crucial thought. A breach might terminate the contract on paper, for sure. But does it terminate the relationship? The fallout from that can damage reputations and burn bridges for years. It just proves that even when the legal story is over, the human one, well, that's often just getting started.